Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Lions-Packers matchup on Thursday night was even better than advertised. Also, the Cardinals and Seahawks look for an advantage in the West this Sunday, and Georgia will beat Texas for the second time this Saturday. It's a football Friday. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
In what was maybe the biggest game in the modern era of the Packers-Lions rivalry, is that possible? The Lions win a thriller, a 34-31 game on Thursday Night Football. Matt Derry was in the building for us. He's the host of Locked On Lions. He joins me now. And Matt, I believe I am still the most hated man in Detroit. You, on the other hand, are not, because the Lions got a win. What was the key in this one?
Well, I just didn't think that the Packers could stop the Lions, and when they needed to get stops, they couldn't get them. I mean, end of the game, this is the prime example. All right, yeah. Green Bay puts points on the board. It's 31-all. And the Lions trudge right down the field pretty much with ease. And then 4th and 1, the end of the game, Dan Campbell elects to go for it, not take the points, and not allow the Packers to get the ball. Jared Goff falls down, handing the ball to David Montgomery, and he still scampered for enough yards to get the first down. They just could not get the stops. You know, we talked all week, you and I did, about the Lions defense and how many players, 14 of them on IR, and then 3 starters out tonight. And yet it was about the Packers defense just not getting the stops when they needed to get them. And give Detroit credit. They gambled and won. They gambled and lost at times, but they just seem to find ways to win. 11 straight wins right now.
What did you think of that call at the end? Because they had the 4th down earlier in the game. They didn't get it. It turned into a Packers score, a key Packers score in their own territory. 4th and 1, I'm looking at this, Matt, going, there's no way with 43 seconds left you can do anything but kick the field goal, because if you don't get it, now the Packers have plenty of time to get, 40 yards, maybe less, to get into field goal range. It seemed like this was one of those Dan Campbell, I'm just going to do this because this is who we are, but it felt overly aggressive to me.
No, it was the right move, and I'll tell you why. And I agreed with it too. Number one, the Lion defense had been on the field a ton, and they were almost, it was almost like whoever touched the ball last is going to win. I think Campbell had that feeling. And the other thing about it is, what's the Lions' strength? It's their offensive line. Whether Frank Ragnow had a big penalty 5 plays earlier, whether Taylor Decker was out of that game, whether Kevin Zeitler had gotten hurt during the game, and Christian Mahogany played for the first time all year, the backup right guard. So the Lions figured it's Montgomery, it's reliability, it's the big back, the big horse, and that offensive line. And Campbell guessed right. I mean, that was the move. You go to you dance with the girl that you brung to the dance, and that's exactly what the Lions did.
Okay, in the NFC right now, what is standing in their way from a Super Bowl trip?
I need to see Philly more, because I think they're playing really well. And the one thing that Philly does that all these other teams don't really do against the Lions, because the Lions O-line is so good, but Philly with Jalen Carter and those guys up front are disruptive. And I'm not sure the Lions have seen a defensive line like that yet. Now that they haven't seen good ones. I mean, tonight, Rashawn Gary got to go off. Kenny Clark's a good player. But, I still think Philly is going to be in their way. But I think the Lions are going to be the 1 seed. This was a massive game. Green Bay had its moments tonight where they played very well. Love made some big-time throws. You and I talked about Kraft this week. I love him as a tight end. Josh Jacobs had 3 touchdowns, but I didn't think they ran him enough in this game. I was very surprised at Matt LaFleur not running him enough. But no, the Lions are kind of destined. They're kind of this team of destiny right now. The Houston game tonight, there's been some games that you question, yet they find a way to win every time.
Yeah, we were texting during the game, like, why are they not running the ball? And then we saw them do it a little bit more. This team has that feel, right? That feel of destiny. Is there any doubt in your mind as you think back? Like, I'm thinking of the Ravens back in that first Lamar Jackson season, 4th down. They're the kings of the 4th down, and then in the playoffs, they have 3 opportunities and can't do it. Are they living too much on the edge?
I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. They're going to be playing these games, the playoff games, at home, and there's something about that crowd. Right. These fans have never, ever seen anything like this. You got to go back to 1957 and last year, and I think they kind of got lucky last year.
4 fourth down touchdowns against this Packers team, Matt, in 2 games. That's crazy.
Well, yeah, 7 out of 8 on 4th down against the Packers too. Yeah. And then Green Bay, and you know this, Pete, you're the Packers. I mean, they're good. Green Bay's a good team. And the Lions just seem to execute well. And at home, they just play with this confidence. And with that crowd, they find a way. And I said this on my show. They introduced the defense tonight individually before the game to these fans. And there's guys trotting out of that tunnel they're introducing that have never been introduced in an NFL game before. And that's just kind of the culture of, forget the offense. Let's introduce some of these no-name guys. And it's working. And it's pretty special.
You can stay up to date all year on the Green Bay Packers and Detroit Lions by subscribing to Locked On Sports today, Locked On Packers, and Locked On Lions on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. You're Locked On, a football Friday. Coming up, the NFC West is tightly contested. Both the Cardinals and the Seahawks have a chance to gain ground. Before we get to that, Bill Belichick may be coaching next year, and it may not be in the NFL. Get ready to tackle the NFL action as we head toward the playoffs with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. You're going to want to check out some lines for the NFL this Sunday. Kirk Cousins faces his former team in Minnesota. FanDuel has the Vikings 5.5-point favorites over the Falcons. Or you could check out Bills Rams. FanDuel has the Bills 3.5-point favorites in LA. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Belichick spoke with the University of North Carolina about their football head coach vacancy, according to reports. The 6-time Super Bowl champion wants to coach again and is open to listening to people at the college level and, of course, in the NFL. UNC fired Mack Brown on November 26th after 6 seasons with the Tar Heels. The 73-year-old Brown, a College Football Hall of Famer, was in his 2nd stint at the school. Belichick is only a year younger than Brown, who is the oldest coach in the FBS this season. Where one former NFL coach is considering joining a college team, another former NFL coach was fired, from his college team. Eric Bieniemy is just 1 season in UCLA as the offensive coordinator, though his agent said this was pre-agreed upon. Once hailed as a potential head coach, Bieniemy sees his Bruins tenure cut short after his offense averaged just 18.4 points per game. UCLA finished 5-7 this season, failing to reach bowl eligibility. The Chargers' chances of upsetting the Chiefs comes down to 30 minutes.
For the Chargers to pull off that upset, to find the way to get that big, big giant win that is still missing from Jim Harbaugh's first season. Like everyone, you can't look at Jim Harbaugh and say, hey, it's been a bad year. You're 8-4. But what you're missing is that cherry on top. And beating the Chiefs would be that cherry on top for this team. And I think when you're looking at what the Chargers need to do to pull off that upset, it's this. Be much better than they have in the second half. You're not going to be able to do what you did against the Falcons last week and beat the Chiefs. You're not going to not be able to score a touchdown offensively and beat the Chiefs this week. It's just not going to happen. You have to be a lot better in the second half. And the Chargers found out that the hard way in the first matchup between these two teams, right? Chargers led 10-0. They lost 17-10. They didn't score a single point in the second half, and they lost that game.
The NFC West is anyone's game. Even the injury-decimated 49ers aren't totally out of it. With that, everyone is looking for an advantage they can find. The Cardinals and Seahawks meet this Sunday to see who can gain that advantage. But even more so, this is a game to figure out what each quarterback is made of.
I don't know, and I'm not going to speak for Corbin Smith at Corbin Smith NFL, Locked On Seahawks, but for me, and this is including the 2021 Ponzi scheme season with Cliff Kingsbury when they went 7-0 and 10-2, this is the most important game of Kyler Murray's career. The reason why I say that is, and I'll just go to Pass to Victory first. The reason why I say that is things are lining up, maybe a year early, and also there's no excuses. There's no outside reasons. He's got all the offense he needs. He's got the best offensive line he's had probably in his life, and the defense is playing out of their shorts. This is a game that may be a pick'em game. This is a game that Kyler Murray needs to take. If Kyler Murray shrinks, for lack of a better phrase, if he plays very small in this game and the Cardinals lose in some sort of fashion that is even anywhere close to convincing, I promised my everydayers that I will have uncomfortable conversations about Kyler Murray at the end of the season. This is the flashbulb memory that people will remember for the 2024 season for the Arizona Cardinals. Win, high note. Lose, uncomfortable conversations. And that doesn't mean their season's going to be over, but you can have the opportunity to go take a division crown or division lead after losing 2 games and the team you're playing had just won 3. It's a very rare air that the Cardinals have the opportunity to grasp. And it's on Kyler Murray being the most important game of his career, 6 years in.
You and I are on the same tangent because to me, this is the biggest game of Geno Smith's career because Geno Smith has never won a division title. He did lead Seattle to the playoffs 2 years ago. They almost made it a year ago, just missed at both seasons 9 and 8. They have not been able to get to double-digit wins. They have not been able to climb to the top of the division. The 49ers had all these injuries, and they have not been the same team. The Rams are a 500 outfit, and they've been very up and down. The Cardinals, they have been pesky, but they've also lost some games they probably should not have lost. Like, this is your year to do it, Geno Smith. And there are so many fans out there. And listen, I don't agree with a lot of the narratives because I think Geno Smith is a really good quarterback. I think when you turn on the tape, he looks a lot better than the numbers that you see on a stat sheet, at least with the touchdowns interception ratio. He's got a really bad offensive line in front of him, at least most this year has. And he has found ways to still be really productive and be the number 3 passer in the NFL at this point. But if you want to silence those remaining critics, win this football game and take what ultimately is a 3-game lead over the Arizona Cardinals because you've got the 2 wins. You swept them. You have the better record ultimately in the NFC West, or at least you're leaning towards that. If you want to go take that division and you want to show this team, I mean, it's a different situation than Kyler Murray. He's got a couple more years on his contract. Geno Smith's got 1 year in his deal after this, and he's 34. So if Geno Smith wants to show the Seahawks, hey, I can be your guy the next 3 or 4 years. Like, I am your franchise quarterback. You need to win an NFC West championship, and it starts with those red zone possessions. You can't be telegraphing balls to Garrett Williams in the end zone. He has been so good until they get inside the 20. I don't think all of this is on him. I think the play calling has been a big problem, but this is a critical game for Geno Smith and this offense in general. Ryan Grubb as well. Hey, Ryan Grubb, do you want to coach a second season in Seattle? Start getting some performance out of the players that you have to what they are capable of. And if you can do that, look, I'm not exaggerating here, and I'm sure, Alex, that you would probably agree with me on this. With the way the Seahawks defense is playing right now, if this offense could come anywhere close to playing like it's capable of, there's not a team in the NFC that would want to play them in January. I truly believe that. But you've got to start proving that on the field, and whether fair or not, it starts with number 7 under center. So you can really say this is a huge game for both quarterbacks for different reasons.
You can stay up to date all year on the Seattle Seahawks and Arizona Cardinals by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Seahawks, plus Locked On Cardinals on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, Georgia is ready to beat Texas again. We've done this before, Texas and Georgia. Remember, Georgia beat Texas handily. Will it happen the same way in the SEC championship game? Our Locked On SEC hosts weigh in.
I just want to ask you a question, Clint. You know, you said that you have all the faith in the world in this Georgia offense and they just can't be stopped. But they weren't world beaters in the first game against Texas. I think, Texas really put Georgia's offense in some very advantageous positions by turning the ball over and giving them short fields. So what gives you confidence now that against the best defense in the country, the Texas Longhorns, that this Georgia offense is just going to start rolling all of a sudden?
We've faced 6 better defenses than Texas's defense.
That one.
That's what gives me all the confidence in the world.
Texas got a legit D.
Georgia has faced 6 defenses better than Texas this year. Who?
Kentucky's D against Georgia stopped the run a great deal. Kentucky has some good players in that second before injury.
Kentucky's defense is better than Texas defense?
At that time, they were. Absolutely, 100%. Texas. When you look at, you said Texas's work over 12 games. I'm not saying they shouldn't be in. Bama shouldn't be in, and I wish we had Luke here because we would give him all heck. Bama should not be in, but Texas's body of work. There was 1 yard in which Texas A&M, who is a fraudulent team, would have changed the entire course of that game. Yeah. 1 yard, and it did come down to Texas A&M shooting themselves in the foot. I can say
Texas stopped them on 4th and 1 twice in that game.
Texas is a good defense. They're not the best defense in the SEC, not by a mile. I would struggle against far other teams besides Texas. If you look at the game film, you look at the body of work.
Who is the best defense in the SEC?
Probably the officials.
Tennessee?
Probably the officials.
Tennessee's defense, I would take hands above anybody. The front seven, certainly. I think the front seven of Tennessee is the best
so
in the
dang
SEC.
Athletic too, man. It's just
long, athletic.
Let me just that like Texas. Look, I tweeted this out over the weekend that like they haven't played 5 of the top 7 teams in the SEC. They've played the bottom dwellers, but all you can do is beat who's on your schedule. Yeah. 2 things can be true. Texas has avoided a lot of the better teams in the SEC, but also 2, Texas is pretty damn good. And I'll give I saw their defense in person a couple times these last couple weeks. They've gotten better. I mean, they have really swarmed to the football. That game at College Station this past weekend. I mean, look, Marcel Reed, they were trying to everything they could, and Texas would not let up. So I do want to give a couple points to Texas's defense. I think they are pretty legit.
Oh, I think the defenses in the SEC are far better than other teams. Like that's not what I'm saying comparatively to everybody else. They're in the top 25, certainly for me in the nation.
And a big advantage that I think Texas has in this game going for them is the fact that Steve Sarkisian can replicate the stuff that Lane Kiffin did. It's essentially the same offense. And that is something that he's going to have a roadmap to move the ball against that Georgia defense and handle their pressures and their defensive line, because Texas is very talented offensively and they have playmakers. So Georgia, they have to be better than they were in that first game against Texas this time.
Yeah, and I think, one big key that I should have mentioned, I guess, being the Texas host, is the health of Kelvin Banks. When you talk about one of the best offensive linemen in the country, maybe the best left tackle in the country, leaves the game against Texas A&M. Although Trevor Gooseby came in, and did well, replacing him, I'm not sure that Texas can go into Atlanta and beat Georgia without their best player on the team and Kelvin Banks. So that's going to be a big, kind of X factor going into this matchup on Saturday.
And finally, and while we're getting a rematch of the Bulldogs and the Longhorns, we will not see UGA and Bell meet again. The Texas mascot, who is a Longhorn cow, was not permitted to travel to Atlanta for this weekend's game. He traveled last year to college football playoff semifinal to Sugar Bowl, but the conference felt the space in Atlanta wasn't suitable. They say everything is bigger in Texas, which means I guess it doesn't fit in Georgia. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, will the Chiefs sew up the AFC West? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.